Zach, what number are you?
Depends on who you ask. To my son, I'm number 1. To my girlfriend, I'm a solid 10.
All right, welcome back to Bearing Up. Here we are again. I'm in my man cave. Zach's in his, he's got a little man cave corner, I guess, there in his office. It kind of is
half office.
That. I still love the flag. But we're back again, episode 2. We skipped a week. We were both on vacation. So, hey, what it is what it is. Yeah. And but here we are back in season 3, diving still straight in. Today we're going to talk, and we're just going right in. I don't got an icebreaker. The whole episode's the icebreaker. The Enneagram.
Not listed.
How much do you know about it? And maybe some people immediately just stopped watching when I said that. I know people like that. So here is the preface, big preface before we dive into this Enneagram. Maybe you can do like a little thing when anyway.
Okay.
Preface. I don't know how editing works. Zach's the editor. I'm just the talker, just the loudmouth. I don't remember what I was going to say. Oh, the preface. So the preface of this is that this is not like, some people take this as like the Bible, and obviously not literally, but this is not a cut and dry. There's not 9 types of people in the world. Okay. Yeah. There is, how many billion people live in the world, Zach?
9
billion people. There are 9 billion types of people in the world, if we're being honest. Sure. Whatever the number is, that's how many types of people there are. So to boil it down to any number, even the even the Myers-Briggs, that's what I was going for, does not completely boil it down enough. There's no test that's going to boil it down enough, because every person, even if they score the same on everything, they're going to have a different background. They're going to have a different set of beliefs. Everybody's going to be different. Yeah. Let's just start there.
Yeah, I had some preliminary thoughts I wanted to share from Scripture.
Okay.
That kind of have this idea. So, like, I guess there's a caveat. So I want us to kind of look at this from a couple of perspectives.
Absolutely.
So Colossians chapter 2, starting in verse 8, going through verse 10, Paul says, and this is the New American Standard, he says, "See to it that no one takes you captive through philosophy and empty deception, according to the tradition of men, according to the elementary principles of the world, rather than according to Christ. For in him is the fullness of deity, dwells in bodily form, and in him you have been made complete, and he is head over all rule and authority." So where this is not, it doesn't even supplement Christ, because Christ is enough. And he is, all that we need. And so we're not adding to the Bible by doing any of this, but I do want us to kind of take the principle of in 1 Corinthians chapter 9, where Paul, starting in verse 19, says, "For though I am free from all men, I have made myself slave to all, that I may win more." And he goes into this idea that to the Jew I became a Jew, to the Gentile I became a Gentile, to the slave I became like a slave, to the free I was free, and I become all things to all people. And so there's this idea that Paul has that he's going to try and understand people the best way that he can,
right.
And understand how to relate to others. And I think that I guess I kind of look at it more like a psychological thing. I guess there might be some spiritual aspects of it, depending on who you ask when you're talking about the Enneagram. I don't think that the spiritual aspects are very popular at all. It's more of a psychology, sociology kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it kind of talks about what motivates us as humans, our motivation and stuff. And we'll get into that a little bit. But yeah, those are kind of just some thoughts. We're not saying that this even compares or is really necessary for us to know as Christians, but it is a helpful tool to help us be able to understand why people do the things that they do.
Well, you're correct. And with that preface out of the way, I think it's important to understand what it's not, but also what it is.
Yeah.
And so we've kind of talked about, what is not, it's not replacing anything. It's not adding to the scriptures. It's not adding to what Jesus does in our life. The way I view it and the way that I think that it is most accurately used, taken advantage of, is through understanding how I relate to other people and how I relate to my God. Because everybody's different. I have dealt with, I've been employed by 7 different elders at 2 congregations, not including my internships. And every single one of them was extremely different, and they all acted extremely different. Even if some of them were similar types in here. And so it helped me, after I found out about this, to relate to what they were thinking more. And why does this one person always say these things to me? Why does this one person always, why are they always negative towards me? This can kind of help that, but more importantly, it's why do I always act this way to this person? Why do I always feel this way about this person? What can I do? And why do I feel this way? So you alluded to what motivates us, and that pretty much boils it down for me. And why I use the Enneagram is because I like to know why people do what they do. I want to know what drives you, what gets you up in the morning. Because if I know that, I can not only relate to you better, I can open up a conversation to you better about who Christ is. And 3, I can have a better relationship.
So one of the issues that I think, or maybe one of the great things about this tool, is that it goes into the vices that we tend to go towards as individuals. And there's it's based off the 7 deadly sins, but you've got nine different types. And so it kind of deviates from that a little bit. But there are these tendencies that each individual we're motivated by. And there's a positive side of it and a negative side of it. And so like anger, anger is one of those things. If you're quick to anger, that may seem like a vice, but there are people that, have that within them that can find a virtue in that, and I like this because it points out your flaws. You take it and you read it, and you take the test and you read about it, and you are disappointed with what you read because it sounds like a bunch of bad stuff about you, and you're like, yeah, I guess I am like that. But it gives you tools to be able to, overcome those things. And so one of the reasons why I like it is because it helps us to learn how we can encourage others that are, prone to fear, prone to anger, prone to pride, and how we can, encourage them to overcome those things and find, peace and safety and humility and, those different things. And so I think it's a great ministry tool, can be. And especially for trying to deal with the things that we ourselves struggle with the most. So
right. No, I agree. And that's basically what it boils down to, is a self-evaluation. And it's figuring out what do I need to do to avoid the things that I don't want to do. And being aware of those things is primary. I guess kind of one more thing before we dive into more of what we were really, more the meat of this is, we're not going to get super deep in this. There is a ton of layers, and the 9 types break down beyond that. We're just going to kind of scratch the surface of this, and maybe we'll have a deeper episode in the future where we say Enneagram Part 2, the deep stuff, or whatever. That's a good title. There you go. But But right now, today, for what we're doing, we're going to kind of scratch the surface and make it more about the relationship side of the Enneagram. And that stinks, because that's a good segue, because there is a specific book that I have on Enneagram relationships, and I believe I've loaned it to someone. So the one book that I needed for this episode, I'm double checking, I don't have. I don't know where it's at. It might be in the house somewhere. I thought it was with my other Enneagram books that I have right here, but it's not. So, well.
There is one book that I want to recommend, and it may be the same one, but it is called The Road Back to You. It's an Enneagram Journey of Self-Discovery by Ian Morgan Cron and Susan Stabile. I don't know if that was the one that you were referring to.
I've got this one. That's that one you just mentioned.
Okay.
The one I was referring to is by the same authors, same company. It's like the same size, same cover and everything, but it's The Road Between Us. So that book is more emphasized on our relationships between people, between numbers.
I'll have to check that one out.
It's a good one. And it talks about, for instance, my wife and I, we both have a lot of 7 tendencies. And so I don't know if we are both 7s, but we cross over a lot in that area. And that can be dangerous because we are the definition of impulse buying. And we cannot go shopping together because it's, hey, should I get this? And it's yes. There's no, well, I don't know. Anyway, it gets dangerous, but it talks about that in that book, stuff like that, how 7s relate to each other and how 7s relate to 1s and how 7s relate to 5s, etc.
Yeah.
So that's a good one. I just think it's somewhere in there.
Well. Before we get into, talking about numbers and all of that, do you want to go ahead and do our test?
Our project? Yes. So maybe you're sitting there and all right, this is what type I am. This is pretty much what I'm doing. I kind of understand the basics of it. First, before we continue, there is going to be something for everybody in this episode, no matter what your level of Enneagram knowledge is. So hopefully you're still around to hear that part. But second of all, we are going to take a test, and I'm going to give you what I feel like is a good starting place. And maybe you've taken the test on here and you never have, and you know exactly what it's going to show. I believe that Enneagram numbers can change, so maybe get on there and take it again. Let's try it. But the place that I first start, and my first recommendation to people as they're diving in, is a short little test on 9 types, the number 9, not spelled out, 9, and then types spelled out.com. And you just click on test, and it'll take you right to it. And it's Riso Hudson. Riso, right? I said that. It's Riso.
Riso,
I believe.
Yeah, it says RHETI test.
Yeah, the RHETI test. And it's just a sample on there. The real one is much longer, but again, they'll still give you a score. So you take this 36 question test and you get a score. And it'll say you're this percent this percent this percent this. And one thing you'll notice after you take this test is that you have most, if not all of the numbers you have a score in. Okay. Sometimes I get 0 in certain areas when I take it. Other times I don't. And sometimes I'll get 1 in that same area. But we're going to both take this here today.
Yeah. And we may not show all of them unless you think
we're going to Zach, let's record it all. And if you feel like in the post that it's mundane and redundant, then we'll just go and make it like fast forward, making us look something.
Okay. And let's take turns reading them out, and that would be a good idea.
All right. So there'll be 36. So yeah, we'll each get 18. And here we go.
Okay, let's do it.
Zach, you can start off number 1.
Okay, number 1. I've been romantic and imaginative, or pragmatic and down to earth. I'm the romantic and the imaginative person.
I am as well. Okay. I'm a hopeless romantic, and I'm big time imaginative. I think I've probably, if I was on a scale, and here's the thing about this, and I've given this to people. This is another disclaimer. There's a bunch of disclaimers with the Enneagram. I've given this test to people and I'm like, well, I'm a little bit of both. Well, that's fine. You're not going to be 100% and 0%. So you're going to select the one you're 51 or more percent of. Ideally, you want to answer where you're at now, not where you've been or not where you want to be. You want to answer where am I right now today? Number 2, I have tended to A, take on confrontations, or B, avoid confrontations.
I'm definitely avoid.
So this is a tough one for me because I like to think that I take on confrontations, but I actually avoid them. If I look at who if I look at what I avoid them more than I take them on. And I wish I was not like that. And in some ways I've changed in that way, and but right now I'm still on the avoid one. There's another one that I might be swinging the other way. So who knows?
Yeah, we'll see.
All right, number 3.
Okay, 3. I have typically been diplomatic, charming, and ambitious, or direct, formal, and idealistic.
This are all hard.
What you got? I'm gonna let you say yours.
My answer is direct, formal, and idealistic for myself.
Yeah, this one's kind of hard to choose for me.
This is a tough one. I am very much like I pretty much say in a perfect world every day. And so I'm more idealistic. My wife would definitely fall under that first one, but I think
I'm going to pick that for 1, 2, diplomatic, charming, and ambitious. Okay. 4.
Number 4. Okay. I have tended to be A, focused and intense, or B, spontaneous and fun-loving.
You're going to pick the second one.
Yeah, and that's another one though that
I'm going to pick that one too.
It just depends.
Yeah.
And this is what's difficult about the whole Enneagram is there's times where my family would tell you he's focused and intense. That's rare, but I have those times. Just because I'm not selecting it does not mean I'm never like that. All right. Generally, it's been A, easy to get a rise out of me, or difficult to get a rise out of me.
It's definitely very hard to make me angry.
Not me. I have A, not been able to speak up for myself very well, or B, been outspoken. I've said what others wished they had the nerve to say.
So again, self-conscious Zach here, not been able to speak up for myself very well.
See, I'm kind of in the middle on this one. It depends because they both go to pretty far extremes, but I'm closer to the one. I'm been outspoken.
15. It's been difficult for me to stop considering alternatives and do something definite, or take it easy and be more flexible.
So this is where I start to deviate from my 7. Like I feel like I'm mostly a 7. But this is where I start to deviate. I have a hard time being flexible and taking it easy. I've gotten better. My wife's made me better at it, but that's what I'm going to select. It's been more difficult for me to take it easy and be flexible and be adjusting to whatever's going on in the moment.
Yeah. I feel like I feel like it's more difficult for me to stop considering alternatives. I'm pretty like at peace most of the time. I can be easy. I can be flexible. Mm-hmm. That's fine. But like when I have to make a big decision, it's kind of hard for me to do so sometimes.
Gotcha.
My habit of being standoffish has annoyed people, or my habit of telling people what to do has annoyed people. I don't feel like I'm an annoyance to people. Like I don't feel like I generally annoy people. I mean, like I feel like I'm pretty good at like trying to like keep the peace for people. But like, I guess if I had to pick one, I'm gonna pick A. On that one, standoffish.
Okay. That's funny. Usually, when troubles have gotten to me, I have A, been able to tune them out, or B, treated myself to something I've enjoyed.
Indulge.
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 It's from Parks and Rec. Treat yourself.
Interesting. Okay.
You seen that? You know what I'm talking about?
Probably.
Parks and Rec. Okay. Anyway, you would know.
Okay.
Your turn.
Okay. 27. I have
depended upon friends, and they have known that they can depend on me. Or I have not depended on people. I've done things on my own. So that's definitely number one there. I am.
Yep. Ditto.
I don't know what the triangle there is.
It's an A.
A. Illuminati. No, just kidding. Go ahead.
28. I have tended to be detached and preoccupied, or moody and self-absorbed. That's one where it's hard to answer because they're both bad.
Awful. Yeah. They're both like, hey, what do you want to like tell people in the world?
Well,
like, here are my weaknesses.
I'm definitely moody and self-absorbed. If I have to pick one of those two.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like I'm detached because I'm self-absorbed. But I'm gonna pick number one on that one.
Okay.
Yeah. I've usually been shy about showing my abilities, or I've usually liked to let people know what I can do well.
I B for me. I don't hide.
Yeah.
The few things I can do, I don't hide them.
Yeah, I don't feel like. I feel like, yeah, you want to like. It's not to show off. Like, I don't feel like that's what it's really asking, but like it's like, I don't know. I'm a valuable asset. You know, it's kind of like I actually think about what is in Romans chapter 12, going in a different direction entirely, about thinking sober-minded, not thinking too much of yourself, but thinking with sober-mindedness about your talents and abilities and stuff. So I think that's there. Might be 1 Corinthians 11.
No.
Either way, let's continue.
I like it. Pursuing my personal interest has been more important to me than having comfort and security, or having comfort and security has been more important to me than pursuing my personal interest. This is another cut and dry one.
Oh yeah.
For me, it's pursuing my personal interests have been more important than comfort and security.
Okay, I do want to ask you why.
Even
on
though
that
that's
one. Why is that so cut and dry?
Because you have to. I mean, it's either personal interest or comfort and security. So, example. Obviously, okay. Well, not obviously. I don't feel like I'm 100% pursuing my personal interests have been more important to me. But like who I am at my core, I have to fight pursuing my personal interests for comfort and security, especially now that I have a wife and daughter. Example, when I was single and by myself, I could spend my money on whatever I wanted to, and who cares if my water gets shut off for a day?
Yeah.
Because I was by myself and I don't care. And I'll get it turned back on, no big deal. I can't do that now.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
But I'm still naturally and often find myself having to fight the pursuing my personal interest.
Okay.
So,
okay. Yeah, I'm picking the second one on that. Comfort and security is more important to me.
Most intelligent people easily pick the second one because comfort and security makes more sense. I don't
agree.
That's a nagging thing in my head about who I am, that like you need to be better about making sure everything's set.
Anyway, yeah, but I feel like more successful people are like, they take risks and things like that. So like comfort and security, whatever. We'll just keep going.
I think it's about like not about thinking that the way I do it's wrong.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay.
I have A, given in too easily and let others push me around, or B, been too uncompromising and demanding of others.
I'm gonna pick the first one.
I am as well, and I've kind of thought about this. I don't think I was always this way, but well, maybe I have, because I can't think of a time where I was more the second one than the first one. But I've kind of wavered close to the line my whole life. But anyway, much of my success has been A, due to my talent and making making a favorable impression. My talent of making a favorable impression, or B, achieved despite my lack of interest in developing interpersonal skills.
I feel like number one for me.
Agreed for me.
Okay,
so then at the bottom of this one, it says, ask you if you're male or female. And then if you know your Myers-Briggs, you can select that if you want. It's just for their own research purposes. And then you move on. Okay, and then it gives you your results. So, let's take a quick break and do our mid-roll, and we'll come back and we'll give you our results. Thank you for watching our episode today. We hope you're enjoying it so far. We want to remind you of a few things. Be sure to check out our social media, Facebook and Instagram. We try to be active on there. Another thing, we are partnered with the Ministry League Network, and we are on their app. You can also check out a lot of really good other podcasts on there, really good stuff. They have a songbook on there. It's really cool. We actually used this on my family vacation last week. We had a singing time, and we had everybody pull up the app and get the songbook out, so that's pretty cool. Finally, make sure to check us out on our Patreon. We have a lot of cool stuff on there. We have different tiers, different levels with different rewards and different access to videos and merchandise, etc., etc. So check us out on Patreon, and hope you enjoy the rest of the episode. All right, we just finished our Enneagram test, and wow, this is it's about exactly what I expected from me. So Zach, let's start with you. I want to hear what you've got.
Okay, so I disagree entirely with this.
Oh no! Are you serious?
Yes, I do. And
wow.
it's I guess particularly because I've gotten to study the types a little bit more.
Okay.
And so the type which I know that I am is like second
Okay.
on here. But
Okay,
for
well,
this test,
yes,
for this test, it came up that I was a type 7. And it's probably because I was just doing it with you.
That's what I was about to say. You were taking it with me.
Taking it with you.
That's funny.
Yeah.
So take the test alone is the moral of the story.
Yeah.
That's funny. All right, give us your top 3
So top 3
based on the test.
So I got a 6 for type 7. And then I've got a 5 for type 9, which I actually am, and type 2.
Uh-huh. Wow.
So, and then the rest of them are 4s, except for type 8 and type 1.
See, that's pretty crazy.
Which is really funny. If you know the Enneagram and you know, like, there's triads. And so the ones that are in the same triad with a 9 are the 2 that I scored the least with. So it's like perfect, actually, the way that this is set up in that sense. And so
that's cool.
Yeah.
So I think you're probably right. I think you're probably a 9. It's interesting to me how spread out yours are.
Yeah.
When I was doing when I first started my studying in the Enneagram, I started but have not finished. Maybe I'll finish it someday. What type was Jesus?
Oh yeah.
And there's basically, in my mind, I've boiled it down to one of 2 arguments. He's either equally all 9, or he is 9.
Yeah.
Because if you know the Enneagram, the 9 is at the top, and it's the peacekeeper, which is what you are, Zach. And that Jesus would ideally be all of these numbers equally, or a peacekeeper. So I lean to he's equally all numbers, but you kind of touch on both of those. You're a 9. But you also are pretty level. Mine is not level at all. You said your highest score on any one number was 6. Yeah. I have 2 higher than that.
Oh, okay.
I got scored 8 in type 7.
Okay.
And then I got a score of 7 under type 2.
Okay.
And then my number 3 was a type 1, a perfectionist, which that's why I feel like might have been one of the more accurate tests I've taken as far as my study of the Enneagram and as far as how I feel I am.
Yeah.
That's why I wanted to take it as I am right now. So 7-2-1. I have a lot of perfectionist in me, but I also have a lot of number 2 in me. But I'm also primarily a number 7.
Yeah.
And then after that, there's only 1 with 4, and the rest are 3s, 2s, and 1s.
Okay. Yeah, like
So
I'm like 4 across the
top-heavy.
board, except for like 2 of them. And then I did want to say you said something about the 9. Like, 9 has kind of been referred to kind of as the chameleon type. You know, it's just like it goes with wherever.
Because it's a peacekeeper.
Yeah, and so like generally, and I feel like even as I was talking, I was like, I didn't realize this until just now. Some of my explanation was about like trying to keep the peace and like trying to like, you know, about conflict and different things like that. So
And I really think you scored so high on 7 because you were taking it with me. Like, that's just I think that influenced it.
I think that's exactly what happened.
So Zach's gonna have to retake the test later. But yeah, so there you go. And that's simple. And again, you just go through, and it would take obviously about a quarter of the time it took us to do it. We probably fast forwarded. I'm not sure how we're gonna do that.
Yeah.
But
and I would say, take this one. There's some other ones that are good too. We may just put links to some other ones too in our description.
It's not a bad idea.
But I want to say that if you really are interested in trying to figure out which of these you are, read about them. Go and look at those books. I've got the digital book. The Kindle edition is cheaper than other editions, so it's great. I do want to share. Before we go too much further, I'm going to put up a graphic on the screen, and it's got all the different types. It's got these characteristic roles. I don't know if you're looking at this or have this available, Logan, as we're looking at it real quick. But it mentions those vices about halfway through, kind of what I was talking about. And there's some other things we haven't got into yet. I mentioned a triad, and there's...
I've never seen this before, Zach.
Yeah.
And this is I like this one a lot because there's even stuff on here that I'm looking at as part of my number 7.
Yeah.
That I'm like, dang.
Yeah.
And
it's good. It's good.
Pretty...
And it also shows when you are in a normal... your normal personality, or in times of great stress or times of great security, you take on the good or the bad characteristics of other types. If you notice, for instance, a type 9, when I'm in periods of stress, I take on the bad characteristics of a 6, which are fear and anxiety. And I feel like that's very characteristic of me. But in security, which are high levels or very healthy, I take on characteristics of a 3, which is the charismatic, performer, the successful achiever, and so I feel like that's very characteristic of me too. I also really like this chart because it has and specifically, as a podcast on encouragement, I want us to really look at this heart's message for each one of them. And this is kind of for me, it's just this is what, if you ever meet a type 4, if you ever meet a type 6, this is the way that you can make them feel valued. This is the way that you can make them feel fulfilled. And it's directly related to that vice that each one of them has. So, for instance, the one type 3, they're very, the negative trait that they have is they are prone to deceive, not in a negative way, but to put on like they are good, they want to
even for themselves.
Yeah, and so so they're kind of like a chameleon in a different way. The 9 is a chameleon in the sense of they want to be a peacekeeper. They want to, be relational and not have any conflicts. The type 3 is like that because they seek to look like they are great. So the motivation is a little bit different. And so the heart's message for a 3 is you are loved for simply being you. That's the message that they need to hear in order for them to feel loved, for them to feel fulfilled, to deal with that darkness, that sin that they are particularly prone to. And so, it's the same for each one of these. There is, like a 6, fear. The message that they need to hear is you're safe. There's security. You can be at peace. And so, each one of these, I think this is a great chart to look at. Maybe something that our listeners or our viewers can look at and find help for them, and trying to figure out what they are and how they can deal with
Right.
and help others.
Well, and I guess as we kind of wind down here, that's really what this is about, And we talked about relationships at the beginning, but it's about 3 relationships, and I've only talked about 2. Your relationship with other people, and that's extremely important. And I'm going to go in an order of importance here.
Okay.
Your relationship with other people, your relationship with other people, and relationship to how they see you and you see them. It can dictate everything from your everyday life to like your health. I mean, it's incredible. I mean, I'm talking about coworkers, family members, love. I mean, just everybody. So how we relate to other people is extremely important, and it's important to realize that they're a person too. And it's why I have road rage, is because I look at a car and I don't see a person. I see a car.
Yeah.
Right? And I have to remind myself there's a person driving that with a soul and a heart and a family that God loves. And then I'm like, okay, I'm not mad anymore. But a relationship with other people. Secondly important, and I'm putting it above, not as a selfish way, but you'll understand, your relationship with yourself. And I'm putting that above your relationship with others because you cannot establish a relationship with others until you establish a relationship with yourself. And you understand, this is who I am. I am this way, and that's okay. And I can be the best version of myself this way, etc. And that's what the Enneagram is about. It's not about trying to... I know somebody who is like, the Enneagram is just like... what's the thing with the stars? Astrology. I'm like, are you serious? Like that? He's like, it's just the same thing as the astrology is. And I'm like, it's not even remotely close. First of all, astrology is about luck and about trying to. Enneagram is about understanding myself and making myself better. I know that I'm different from other type 7s. Anyway. Second of all, and third of all, it's about our relationship with God. And that's the most important. It's about, there's 2 lines on this graph, and maybe you'll bring it back up, Zach, with this point. Mm-hmm. But there's the vice line, and 7 of those Enneagram numbers have one of the 7 deadly sins. The other 2 have something similar. If you don't know what the word means, look it up. Google it. That's what Google's for. And then, so that's what we struggle with in our relationship with God. But then at the very bottom is our reflection of God. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the most important line on this whole thing. Yeah. Because God, and that's why I talk about how Jesus is all 9 numbers. I believe Jesus is all 9 numbers. I really do. Because he was just the embodiment of what a person is supposed to be and what God is. Ones, they reflect God's goodness and rightness. Yeah. That when you look at yourself that way, it's totally different. Zach, you are a reflection of God's peace and oneness.
Yeah. So that's one way that, particularly because of what motivates me, how I can help shine the light of who God is. Yes. And it's the same, with yours, joy and abundance. The great things that, these are definitely things that reflect, our God, and, especially in our covenant relationship with him.
Yes. And so find your number and go through that. 8s, my mom is an 8. My wife and my mom are 8s. We don't have to talk about anything about that. But they reflect God's power and protection. Like a God, and if you know my mom, she does not back down from anything. And my wife's very similar. And the God's power, 5s, God's wisdom and truth. And this is not something to stoke like, oh yeah, I'm this part of God. It's just like you take that as a reflection of, I can show this part of God to the world because of who God made me. Yeah. And that's kind of where I think the episode winds down to a perfect point, is that this ultimately is about understanding yourself to the max. And I have nothing planned, but I think that there may be at least an episode 2 on an Enneagram in the future where we go deeper. At the minimum, a Patreon series, but we'll did I say minimum twice? Maybe both. I don't know.
We'll see.
Anyway, The man cave is still not climate controlled, like I told Zach, and so that's why my forehead is all shiny. But that's all. Zach, do you have any more final thoughts before we put a bow on this?
You know, I feel like I think it's important to again reemphasize that this is just a tool, and just like any tool, it's not perfect. I've had people, they take the test and they read all about their particular type and they're like, well, so what? But we can look at this and maybe for some of us we find this a particularly helpful tool. I find it a particularly helpful tool for understanding myself. My girlfriend's taken the test, and she has read a lot on it, and so she feels pretty confident about where she is, and so in helping to understand me, I've reflected about things on type 9 for her. I've reflected on her personality type, and I wouldn't, and I don't really actually feel comfortable calling it a personality type, because I feel like that's what Myers-Briggs is. It talks about like the things that you do, like what your common, what you commonly, how you commonly act in different behaviors and things like that. But I feel like this is more this is really talking about what motivates you. It's not really talking about how you act, but why you act the way that you do. And so I would rather call these like the 10 or the 9 key motivators behind human behavior. So again, you might find this a particularly helpful tool, maybe not. But one of the reasons why we're even talking about this is because over the last several years, this has gained a lot of traction. A lot of people are talking about it, have been talking about it. And so we thought that it would be important to discuss this topic with you on here.
Yeah. Kind of a final thing before we leave you. Zach already mentioned The Road Back to You. I don't have the paperback or the hardback cover on it because I'm a child and I ruin them. Also, that's the preliminary. If you just want to learn about the Enneagram, I recommend The Road Back to You. The sequel book to that, I think there may be 2 sequel books to that, but the one that I have and I know about is The Road Between Us. It talks about relationships. Very good read. Zach, I recommend that to you. Next.
Okay, yeah.
If you just want something thin that you can get from Amazon easily, it's just titled The Enneagram, and this is Lena, and Peter Harris. It is about as basic as you can get with the Enneagram, so it's a good start as well. And then, if you've finished all that and you're like, I want more, I know I can learn more, you can dive into this bad boy right here, personality types, and it is about each type in this book is about 4 books of that together. So it dives very deep into the parts. It dives into the health of each part and how healthy am I. Yes, I'm a 7, but am I a healthy 7 or an unhealthy 7? And what can I do to make myself healthier? So very intense. That's for advanced learners only.
And all of our listeners are advanced learners because all of our
types.
Listeners are fantastic people and very intelligent in every way. They should be running our country.
Like, read these first, and then that.
Yeah.
And then after you've read this entire book, can you look at the graphic that Zach put up?
But anyway,
well, Zach, that's all I've got for today. Do you have any final words before we close in prayer?
I think that's all. But I
right,
appreciate our listeners and our everything that we get to do with this podcast. So, but yeah, let's go ahead. We'll dismiss with a prayer. And remember, before we close in prayer, I do want to mention that we do have, just very quickly at the very end, we have a servant spotlight, and so we're going to talk about somebody who has shown a servant heart right after the prayer. So let's pray, and then we'll do that. Yeah. God, we thank you so much for this day, for being with us, and we thank you so much for our listeners who are sticking with us, and the discussion that we've been able to have over this tool, and help it to not detract from the message of the gospel, but help it only to be a tool for encouragement, for us to learn more about ourselves and about others, and learn about how we can overcome the struggles that we have, so that we have a better relationship with you. We thank you so much for Jesus. We thank you that he, in his humanity, is able to encompass all people, and all are able to relate to him, as he came to this earth and was perfect in every way, and gave up his life for us so that we also could be perfected by you, and that we might be forgiven of our sins. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. So for the servant spotlight today, I want to bring to your attention a man by the name of Matt Hicks. He is a member of the Riverbend Church of Christ in Dalton, Georgia, and I've only just met him last weekend. But interestingly enough, the preacher of the church there, Barry Grider, was out of town at a gospel meeting. There was a guest speaker that was planning on being there and got sick. And the night before, Matt was told, hey, can you give us a lesson and take over? And he gave 2 very wonderful lessons that Sunday morning. This was on my vacation going up to Dalton, Georgia. And I was just very encouraged by the heart that he has in his ministry, as he preaches and as he encourages. So Matt Hicks, you have the heart of a servant. Thank you for being of that kind of heart. So thanks for everyone for watching. Hope everybody has a great rest of their week.